Roll call, we have Alex, Cecil, Kathleen, Ruthann, Laura, and Mike. And I'm Bob Perry, the chair. And at this point, let's do the pledge. Kathleen, if you will lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kathleen. And tonight we have two new alternate members for the Planning Commission. It is Michael, right?
Michael,
We probably ought to. We have Matthew. We have Matthew here written down, but we'll change that to Michael Fortune and Alex Burnson. Scott, do you want to do one at a time, or do you want to do both of them together, oath of office?
Which would you prefer?
Ask them.
it doesn't matter to me.
The easiest way. Yeah.
Let's do one at a time. And we'll do Michael.
Sure.
First.
Okay, Michael, if you would like to stand and raise your right hand, say aye, and then your name, and then repeat after me.
I, Michael Fortune,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Alex?
Welcome, Mike.
Thank you very much.
I, Alex Berenson,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties
and that I will discharge the duties
of my office
of my office
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Thank you and welcome to the Planning Commission.
Welcome, Alex.
Welcome back.
I can get you to sign that. Just give it to me by the end of the meeting.
Thank you very much.
I wasn't here very long the first time.
So just a reminder to Alex and Mike that there is some training involved, and when we hear from, what is that, Land Use 101, who puts that on? League of Towns. When we hear from them, Scarlett will send out a message to our two new alternates to either do the training at the online, distance learning at the university, or you can get it online. And we'll get that information from you tonight on exactly how to get it online, so we can give it to Michael and Alex.
I'll email that so they actually have the link.
Thank you.
Will you send it to me again? I'd like to
Actually-
just review it.
Yes, when I get those announcements, I send them to everybody so that it doesn't hurt to go multiple times if you want.
Alex, Mike, when you get that training done, let Kathleen know she is our training chairman.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, you all know that we're going to be broadcast tonight, so when we do speak, we'd like to have you speak into the microphone. Approval of minutes. We have two months of minutes, one for November 13th, 2019. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes for November 13th, 2019.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Laura. And do we have any corrections from anybody? I have a couple. Page 5. Line 243. I have, Scarlet Bank had that. I think probably the
said.
word said should go in there.
Got it.
And page 7, line 366. S. Bankett explained, said that planning commission, I think we eliminate.
Either explained or said.
I
Yeah,
took the said from the other place and put it
move
over
it,
here.
yeah, take one to, right. That's all I had for November 13th minutes. Anybody else have anything? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor of approving the minutes from November 13th?
I have one question.
Yes.
I was not at that meeting and I'm not shown as excused. Is that something that you need to do?
I'm going to address that in a second.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes for November 13th,
Aye.
2019?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Nay? Excuse, or you're abstaining?
I was here, so I
Okay.
can't.
Who's
Yeah.
abstaining? Just Kathleen? Well, also the new,
No, the alternates do not vote.
right?
Yes, alternates won't be voting tonight.
Okay, so
But
just
I don't
Kathleen.
vote because I wasn't here, so I can't approve the minutes, right?
You can abstain.
I wasn't here.
I'll put you down as abstaining.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Planning Commission will consider approval of the minutes for December 11th, 2019.
I so moved.
Got a motion from Roland. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, are there any corrections?
My only question is, the parts in yellow,
Yeah.
it says change. When was that change made?
I forgot to take off the yellow.
Those were changes that we were sending on to the,
Commission?
actually, those were changes that I needed to make in the draft that you have before you tonight for the setback ordinance. Weren't they the setback changes?
Yes, it looks
Yeah,
like
there are
these
quite
are
a few
separate.
yellow. Right?
Yeah.
And so for the final minutes, Jesse needs to take that highlight off. He had them highlighted, so as I went through, I made sure I didn't miss any of them.
Okay,
So for the final copy, he'll take that off.
okay. Well, I hadn't seen them before and I
Oh, yeah.
thought, what are the highlights?
I usually take those off, I must have forgot.
That's okay.
Anybody have any corrections on those minutes?
I didn't see
I have a couple. Page 6.
He's a good
I
guy.
wrote it in.
Page 6, line 275. Arsenal Asset Commission members want the parentheses, the public. I think we can eliminate maybe one of the out of there.
Yeah,
Page. I think I'm on the wrong minutes. Page 6, you said?
Page 6, line 275.
Oh, got it.
Okay. Also on page 6, line 295. The sentence starts, will not be very many ADUs, she asked Scarlett and Arsenal if there is, should be inserted.
Yeah.
And the other one I had was, I'm maybe looking at it wrong, but on page 8, line 295, I think that's where Scarlett came in to give her reports.
page 8, 295.
Yeah.
395.
395.
What about it?
I think that's just when, I believe that sentence is when Scarlett came in to give reports. Okay,
Yeah.
so that doesn't need to be changed, corrected, or moved around.
No, that's just a divider in the staff
Yeah.
reports.
Okay, that's all I had. All in favor of the minutes as?
Aye.
Aye,
I abstain, I was not here.
okay, Ruth Ann abstained,
I abstain also.
Laura abstained. We have an aye vote from myself, Kathleen, Roland. Thank you. All right, moving on. Citizens may appear before the planning commission to express their views on issues within the city's jurisdiction. Comments will be addressed to the commission. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person. The total time allotted to public comment is 21 minutes. Persons wishing to address the commission during public comment should sign on the public comment sheet, public comment sign-in sheet located at the entry to the room. And we don't have anybody, so I think we are set to move right on to the public hearing. Going back to that issue about you not being here. Scarlett, Jesse, if we could have in the future listed the people who are present at the meeting and list the people who may be absent or excused.
I'm wondering if I thought I was doing that. Did I not put attendance on here?
On
We
that,
got attendance, but we don't have anybody who was excused or
Okay.
absent.
And in my mind, excuse is different than absent. And so there probably need to be two different ones.
Right. Okay. And then you'll have to tell me if someone is excused or if they're unexcused.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of like high school, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're AWOL.
Okay, we got that taken care of. Public hearing. Remarks during,
Mr. Chair, there are
Yes.
no one has signed up to speak in either the public comment section or the public hearing section.
okay. But we still need to read that, correct?
Yes.
Public hearing remarks during the hearing are limited to 5 minutes per person. The total time allotted to hearing comments is 50 minutes. Persons wishing to address the commission during public hearing should sign on the sign-in sheet for public hearing located at the entry of the meeting room. You may also email comments to the city recorder at sbankhead@providence.utah.gov by 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. By law, email comments are considered public record and will be shared with all parties involved, including the planning commission and the applicant. The public hearing is, item number 1, prior to making a recommendation on the proposed code amendment to Providence City Code Title 10, Zoning Regulations, Chapter 8, Area Regulations, Section 1, Area Regulations, and Sections 3, Setbacks, the Planning Commission is holding a public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an opportunity for anyone interested to comment on the proposal before action is taken. The Planning Commission invites you to attend the hearing in order to offer your comments. You may also email comments to the city recorder, sbankhead@providence.utah.gov by 2 p.m. the day of the meeting. By law, email comments are considered public record and shall be shared with all parties involved, including the Planning Commission and the applicant. So we don't have anybody here. Let's move right on to the action item.
And while you're waiting, just so you know, I did not receive any email comments.
Okay. Welcome, Josh.
I missed your swearing in, didn't I?
We just,
Just trying to make it.
we just made a notice of a public hearing. Did you want to speak for the public hearing for the setbacks? Okay. Action item, then we'll move on. Should the planning commission not be able to make a decision or take exception to the action items, then that item will be added to revert back to a study category. The applicant will have 15 minutes to introduce and make a brief presentation. Legislative action, number 1, Providence City Commission will consider for a recommendation to the City Council proposed amendments to Providence City Code Title 10 zoning regulations, Chapter 8 area regulations, Section 1 area regulations, and Section 3 setbacks. What does the commission members like to offer?
These are all,
I know.
this is all the ones we've gone through at the last meeting, and
Yep.
they're just all the better what we have proposed.
Any comments from the commission? I think we have something like 13 pages, 12 pages, excuse me. Hearing that we don't have any comments, is there a recommendation to move this to the City Council? Anyone?
I move that we recommend to the City Council the proposed amendments to the Providence City Code Title 10 zoning regulations, Chapter 8 area regulations, Section 1 area regulations, and Section 3 setbacks as we have here.
Got a motion from Roland Cecil, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Laura Vanda. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed? Abstained? Carried. Thank you. And item number 1 of the study item is the Planning Commission will review street cross-section options and parcel streets. Charlie, would you give us a little background on why we're bringing this up?
Well, many of you were involved when the city went through the process of 2100 South. The county was showing a right-of-way for 2100 South, and when the developer in the neighborhood came to the city and asked to be annexed, the county required that the developer also annex that right-of-way. The neighbors to the south felt like the right-of-way was in the wrong place, and so they challenged the surveys. During the course of that, as the surveyors were getting together and deciding how to make that all work, the neighbors to the south also not only challenged the surveys, but as they looked into it, they challenged whether or not the county truly had the right-of-way that had been shown on there. That ended up going to district court, and during the district court hearing, the county withdrew any claim to that right-of-way. And so since Providence City's claim to it was based on the fact that the county told Providence City we had to have the developer annex it, when the county withdrew their claim, we didn't have much to stand on. So, long story short, the judge made the decision that the property in question, since the county wasn't going to make claim to it, that it was an unincorporated area dedicated to the county for a road, they gave that gap to the neighbors on the south. So then the city had to decide with the developer how to proceed with the development, because the city wanted to have an east-west road in the area of we'd always planned it for 2100 South because that was the county road, and that was kind of the area where we figured that Millville would come up to one side and Providence would go to the other side, and we'd have the county road, but the county didn't want to have that road there. So like I said, they asked Providence to put it into Providence City. So we knew that there was a potential of Millville being on one side of that road and Providence being on the other side. So we have planned all along that that would be a road. When it was decided that there wasn't an unincorporated way, the master plan still shows that we would want a road in that area going east and west. So after much discussion between the council, the developer, we worked with the developer. They modified their plat some to reduce frontages a little bit so they could scoot their lots to the north to accommodate a partial road, because we do have on our book the ability to build a partial road. Now, a partial road means on the developer's side, they will put the full sidewalk, the full park strip, the full curb and gutter, and then 24 feet, oh yeah, I didn't get it, I'm sorry, and then 24 feet of asphalt. The reason why we came up with 24 feet of asphalt, 2 travel lanes, if you're looking at 10 to 12 foot travel lanes, 24 feet accommodates that. So Providence City learned its lesson. We made an error one time about 20 years ago, and we allowed a developer, at that time our asphalt width was 29 feet on smaller residential roads, and so we allowed a developer to put 14.5 feet of asphalt down. Luckily for us, it still has, the other side still has not developed, but it's only a short distance, and it was a good learning tool. And so that's when we went from calling them half streets to partial streets. So, long story short, the developer and the council agreed that in the area of what we now call 700 South, because there is no 2100 South, that 2100 South would be put in as a partial street. Now, the neighbors on the south side do not want development at this time, and they don't see development in the distant future. So there was some talk of moving the road further north, and then the road would not touch their properties. With that idea, if in the future they do like many other people that get to a certain point and decide that development is the lesser of two evils or something, and they decide to sell their property for development, if the road was further to the north and they couldn't access it, that may hinder their property. So the city council felt like they should put a partial road in to give the people on the south the opportunity, if they chose to develop, to be able to add on to that road and have a full-blown street at some point in the future that they could use for access. Tonight that's a done deal. We're not here to debate whether that was a wise decision or not. That's just the history behind the discussion that has brought partial streets back to life. So what we want to talk about tonight, and Ryan, you can jump in here if I misstate, but is just the idea of partial street cross-sections. Is there a place for partial street cross-sections, or is it something that we need to think twice about? That maybe we should not have partial street cross-sections. Maybe we should work with development to make sure that when it's done, they're putting in full widths. At least full widths of asphalt. Well, at least a full width. Let me rephrase that. Or change our partial street cross-section to include the full width of asphalt and curb gutter on both sides, so that the only thing the other developer or the neighbor to the other side of the street would put in then would be the park strip. They'd have to dedicate property for the park strip and the sidewalk. So that's what, is that a fair statement?
Fair statement. So
Ryan, I'm gonna be mean and say you
I'm
gotta
gonna
come
stand
to a
up there.
mic.
Yes, that's fine. That's good. I'll get used to it.
YouTube can't hear you if you're over there.
So I got a question before we start. 500 south, where the development is for Jeff Envision Homes, does that come into play with this?
500 South is actually a much wider cross-section, and it was a right set aside for the county. It's actually, and I need to look it up for sure, but I believe it's a 99-foot right-of-way down through there. That road was built to an 80-foot profile, but it's still got 14-foot, I think it is, Ron, you might know better, I think it's 14-foot park strips, because that road was shown as a major road at one time on master plans. So that road, when the Champlin development, as they're coming in, that's actually one thing that we talked about, and on their first concept, that's one thing they had to change, was they had to accommodate that full width of road. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to build that entire amount of road, because that's a bigger road than we would require any developer, unless it was a great big commercial developer that had traffic demands that would require that kind of road. That's a road to move traffic from east to west. So, but the Champlin development still has to accommodate the width of that right of way. And so they've shifted. Their original development was a little bit too far south. So they've shifted further south so that they do accommodate the existing right of way.
I may have the wrong road. This is the road that's just south of Envision Homes over here past the roundabout.
Talking about 100.
100?
Oh, 100 south.
100 south, is that a partial? Was that considered a partial?
It was going, yes, west of the roundabout is a partial road because that developer, but I think they may have put more than 24 feet of asphalt because it was in a commercial area. But that developer did not finish the entire road.
Right.
Where there's undeveloped property on the south side. So there is some partial road there west of the 100 south roundabout. Now, we were actually looking at doing the same thing east of the 100 south roundabout, next to the Visionary Home project, which is called Providence Gateway, the townhome condominium project.
Mm-hmm.
However, in working with the property owner, the developer to the south, those two developers got together, made an arrangement, and they put the road in together. So there's a full width road on the east side of the roundabout to the east end of the Meisner development and the Visionary Homes development.
Now, the road I was thinking about is the road in back of, or proposed road in back of Big O Tires. It's going to go north and south.
No. It's further
Is it
south.
further south?
You've
It's
taken me
discount.
home. Remember, you took me home one night?
Yeah.
It's the next, that road there is 3rd south, and then the next main one will be 5th south.
The proposed road you're talking about is behind Discount Tires.
Discount Tires.
And it's
Excuse me.
proposed at a 66-foot right-of-way. And honestly, I would have to look. I don't know. I think it's a partial finish on that road.
Yeah. Okay.
But the Champlin one is the further one,
Right. 500.
right?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No. So in light of that, there's a few things to consider. Now, staff is not looking to sway you one way or the other, only bringing fact and information for you to evaluate. So in one of those, I have prepared a basic estimate of what the cost difference would be. So you kind of get an idea, if you were the contractor doing that, what you as planning and zoning would be requiring, what kind of that. Now this is draft form, and I'm going to pass it out, I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to collect it. So anyway, because it's draft, it will public that way.
Thank you.
So if you were to make the change, what it would require to go from the partial here that is 24 feet minimum, and if you'll scroll just up, Jesse, to the normal here. At that point, the typical cross section, you'll see residential at 30 minimum, and the residential, I assume that's a general plan, the general plan at 37. So what I've done is I've gone through and said, if you require the extra width, if you require more than 24, so I started with 0 to 24 just to kind of give a baseline. So you'll see in that column 0 to 24, if we have 100 foot long, that's kind of a base width of a lot. So for every lot, this is kind of the cost for every lot. If they're half-acre lots, they might be larger if they're quarter-acre lots anyway. To kind of give that baseline. So we have a 24-foot wide, 3 inches of asphalt. So then we convert that. Anyway, that gets a base price of including the asphalt, the base, the untreated base course, and the curb and gutter. That gets a price of about $6,800. You can all see that number? All followed where I was? Okay. So for every lot, that's their cost for the road. Now that doesn't count the water line, the sewer line. They have to do all of those things anyway, whether they do a full width or not. If the commission said, no, we require a full 30 feet minimum, so it's a minimum road, then you go and you add the extra from the 24 to the 30 feet wide, and you can see that column there. Now that does include curb and gutter. So I've added both the additional 6 feet of asphalt, 6 feet wide of asphalt, and the curb and gutter in that number. So it would take it from about 6,800 to a total of about 10,700. So that kind of gives you, it increases by a 58% increase. Widening it to the general plan, the 37-foot wide, you can see the next one over has a small amount because it only has that extra, it has that 7 feet instead of 6, but you're adding that to it. And so if you do the full 24, so if you go from 24 to 37, you have an extra 5,000. Total, you've changed it from 6,800 to 11,800, a little over. So keep in mind, one of the considerations is, okay, what's it going to cost to require it? Two is, in those areas that you allow this, is a developer ever going to come to do the other side? Because if they're not, and the city's going to pick that up someday, then that's something to consider. If it's in highly developable areas and you figure, hey, you know what, this is going to be developed, the next one's going to develop, and that progresses, then these stretches make it fairly easy when development is assured. It's when there's any question that the development is not there, that's where the question comes. So anyway, kind of just wanted to give you a picture of what price-wise, what you may be talking about, so you can sit and understand what the developer is going to say. I mean, that's their shock to them. Whether that concerns you or not, I thought it would be helpful for the discussion. So anyway, now I'm going to pick them up.
Yes.
Deputy Chair. So when you talk about a partial road, you're talking about a road with curb and gutter on one side, but not
I
on
wrote
the
on
other.
it, sorry.
And you're gonna stick that to somebody else, or it may never get done if it's not in a developable area, correct?
That is potential. So at that point, because if you could, in a lot of cities, the city owns the street, but in counties, oftentimes the residents own to the middle of the street. So what you're doing is one developer is not developing to the middle of the street, he's developing a full drivable road, 24-foot drivable road.
But it doesn't have a curb and gutter on the
But it
other
doesn't
side.
have a curb and gutter on the other side. So, and there is issues that can create from an asphalt side. But in fully developed areas, then you pick that up, and the next guy that develops, he doesn't have to put in the water, the sewer, because those are already in, right? And he doesn't have to put in all of the asphalt. So all he's left to put in, he has a lot less. If he's coming on the other side to develop, he has a lot less cost, right? He gets the benefit of the first guy coming in. But keep in mind, everybody benefits by the guy who came before them. Every water line is connected to another water line that came before them. A spring came before that. Every time you develop, you have something that came before you, and you benefit by that in the process. Question for us is, what does the city expect, and how do we have good planning, development, and be able to attract people in, but also have the end product that the city wants. So
in essence, what do we require as a city?
That's yep.
So we
That's the question
did,
you're going to have. So anyway,
so we could equate this conversation to 500 South. What's happening on that lower southern western side of that piece of property?
Now, are you back on truly the 500 South this time?
Yes.
The Champlin? Okay. Yes.
The Champlin.
We could
It's
equate
500 south and what cross street? What, is it east, west?
Fifth West,
Fifth west.
yeah, 500 South, west of Fifth West, the extension of 500 South, west of Fifth West.
Okay, is that the low property?
Yes,
Is that what you're talking about? Okay.
yes. Yes, well, yes and no. That's one time where the city's going to have to look at that as part of the development with the Champlins.
Mhm.
If the city wants to continue to have a larger, that, because one of the things that we can do, we can make developers do quite a bit when they come to town, but only within their proportionate share. Now, at the point of annexation, we asked for more, which we did when that was annexed. And so, but we would also work with the developer. If the developer wanted that road, wanted to utilize that road and move it a little further to the south, and you could do that bend easily or safely, not easily, but make sure it was a safe road. I think the city would entertain, so long as Fifth South still came through in the general area. When we put them on a map, we're drawing lines in the map, but that doesn't mean that there's surveyed lines in that that's where that road has to go. That's a general plan. So as long as he meets the area, the city would probably, and it's a safe road, allow him to shift it a little so he could have homes on either side and maximize his dollars. But the way he likes to see his development, I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's actually going to keep it on the south side of the development and have the road along the south with north-south streets going into his development. So it'll be interesting. And then as that road goes down, that's one road though that we would require, because as that property's coming in to be annexed, and it's up against property that's not really developable because it's Ballard Spring, it's Little Ballard, and so you can't build the road down in the spring, in the pond. So we would say to whoever's developing, you've got to accommodate that road, because the pond, you can't develop on, you can't build the road in the pond. So you gotta, the people on the north side of the pond have to accommodate the road, the whole road.
Does commission members know where we're talking about?
Yes.
Everybody understand? Okay.
Does that make sense to everyone, what I'm saying? Okay.
Kathleen Gutierrez.
Yep.
So if we know that there's not going to be any chance that somebody's going to come along and finish that other side of the road, I mean, a road that butts up to a spring is a problem waiting to happen. And so in those kinds of cases where we know someone else is not going to come along to finish up that road, perhaps we ought to look at some kind of a regulation that says if we know there's no one going to develop that other side of the road, that it needs to have a curb and gutter on it. I don't know.
Right, and we looked at that with the annexation. So we discussed that with the annexation of that property. I don't know, Kathleen, if you had been on the commission very long. You
I
guys.
don't remember talking about that.
You talked about the zoning because of the single family high, which was different than what had been planned for. So we did talk about how they would handle that road at the point of annexation. I think that on a case-by-case basis, there are times when a partial road would be acceptable. But I think there are also times when a partial road is probably not a good answer. Now, depending on the circumstance, hopefully development will pay for that entire road, but if the city's asking for more than the impact that the developer is bringing, then the city may work with the developer to finish that road. But that's on a case-by-case basis, and there's a lot of things that come into play.
So what you're saying is a hard and fast rule is not a good idea.
I'm saying that sometimes in planning, a hard and fast rule is difficult to administer in all situations. But they also, if you have hard, fast rules, then you don't get into people feeling like they've been, you're being capricious.
Rolling the chair.
Yes.
Aren't we in this just deciding whether or not this partial cross section that we have here we approve it, and we're not really discussing whether or not it's going to be used near the Champlin property or not. That's not in any of this discussion. All we're doing is just approving this right here.
That this is what a partial road would look like.
Right, that's what we're doing.
That's what we're talking about
Yes.
tonight.
So this is approved. This cross-section is one we're using. What you're looking at and you're considering is, should we keep using this? Should we do something different? That's what your discussion is.
Representative Chair.
Yeah.
I think one of the considerations, especially on a partial road where it ends, would also be public safety. And if it's by a waterway, how is that blocked for public safety matters? Part of the discussion.
Right, but I don't want you to get so bogged down in one specific location
Right.
Right.
It would just be part of the consideration.
that you don't see the forest for the trees. Yes, there certainly are things that we would consider. There are times when we have not allowed people to do a partial road. We've made them adjust their development to accommodate the full-size road just for whatever reason. But I think the question tonight is, should we allow partial roads at all? Or should we say, you can do a partial road, but your partial road is at least curb to curbs, not, well, at least sidewalk to the opposite curb, not just sidewalk and partial asphalt. So I think that those are the discussions. I don't think it's a matter of where should we allow it necessarily, because I think that will depend a lot on the topography and the geographical features that are in the area. I think the discussion, and I hope I'm not misstating, but I think the discussion really is, if you want to allow partial roads, how big of a partial road, what do you want in that partial road? What do you want to make sure it has? Isn't that the discussion, Ryan?
If you're gonna allow something. If you're gonna allow something other than the typical street cross section, make sure it's defined that that's what you want. If you still want the partial street section, that's the discussion. If you still want it the way it was or is, that's one where you can modify, and that's the question, what you would modify it to if that's that, or eliminate the partial street and simply require the typical cross section. There are some options.
One thing that I might add that we do make the developer do on the partial street cross section, Jesse, will you scroll down? Don't know if it shows it on here. Does it show a shoulder? We make them finish off the side that does not have curb and gutter. It doesn't just end abruptly. They have the asphalt,
Like
but
some
then
of
they
our
have to.
streets in town.
Yes, like some of the existing old streets.
Yeah.
But we do have them, so they don't just lay the asphalt and then you got a 3-inch dip down or anything. They do have to taper that shoulder on the unfinished, we'll call it the unfinished side, just for purposes of this discussion. But they do finish that a little bit, so it's not just
That
it's
would
not a
be-
risk.
Does
That
it
would be
become a
gravel,
ditch
right?
of some kind?
No, it depends on what they're, again, what the need is.
Or gravel.
Yeah. So, but I just didn't want you to think that you had a nice road and then there's a 6-inch drop off and just nothing unfinished. We do make it so it is to meet your safety factor.
Roll the chips.
Roll in the chair.
It's okay, go ahead,
Be
Ron.
my guest. Be my guest. Ladies
Laura?
first.
Okay. One consideration that is concerned is, when the conversation was, if we felt another builder was coming on, would build on the other side versus a piece of property where the build on the other side was not really feasible. I always worry when we have two sets of policies, because what's feasible or not feasible now in years to come could be feasible, and then it becomes subjective to the eye of what is buildable or not buildable. I guess I would just always want to have a consistent policy, whichever way we go.
Once, I think we're gonna need partial, street cross sections, and I think the one we have fits. Our problem is that we're gonna have to know a time and a place when something comes up that doesn't fit, and we're gonna have to make a decision then. True, this may not work all the time, but as of right now, this appears to be a good move.
Kathleen, Chair. My question to staff is, does this work for now? Is there a reason to change it? I mean, does something come up to say, we really need to look at this and perhaps change it because it's not working? Or, I guess recommendation from staff is what I'm looking for. I mean, it's come up, so obviously there's some kind of question about it. But if it's not working, then let's look at what does work. But if it's working okay, why mess with it?
It was brought up at the last council meeting. The council,
Council or commission? Okay.
At the last council meeting, it was brought up to have a look at. Whenever we talk about land use and items, it needs to go through planning and zoning first. So that's the proper spot for things like this to be first discussed. And so that's come for your consideration. And at this point, it's totally a discussion study part. You have a desire to proceed on a study. You say, yeah, it works. I mean, from a planning perspective, how do you think it's working? So I turn the question back rather than recommendation from staff.
What's the context that it was brought up?
I think she did a very good job of bringing it up to 2100 South. Those property owners indicated that there was new council members and enough of them that they brought the issue back up to light and they wanted it to be discussed. So it's being discussed. So,
We did our job. We discussed.
Yeah.
I think that-
Do we need Scarlett, do we need a deadline on this, or can we mull this over some more?
I think it's always wise to mull something over
Yeah.
at least until the next meeting, but that's your prerogative. As the commission, you can decide that. One thing that I do want to let you keep in mind, since you do approve the subdivision plats, you will know when we're using a partial road because it's shown on those subdivision plats. And we generally bring that up to you and let you know that we don't use them very often because most of the time a developer wants to get the best bang for their buck, and the best bang for their buck is to be able to maximize development on both sides of their infrastructure they're installing. But there are a couple of occasions where we've utilized partial streets. But you will see them when they come. It won't be a surprise to you.
So we don't have anything right now that's pending that's gonna look like that this will pop up. Other than maybe,
Maybe Fifth South. That's
Fifth South.
just a little bit of debate there. But other than that,
what does the commission feel? Want to take have some answers for the next meeting? You want to give it some thought?
I've seen this enough times that I'd like to leave it just as it is.
Alex, what's your thought?
I try to view it from both sides, and from a developer standpoint, I think it's great. Because, I mean, aesthetically, it's not my favorite thing, but I do think that it encourages more developers, and I think it encourages faster development. And so, I actually think it's a good policy. I don't know other cities that do it. But.
Kathleen?
That's a good point. What, is this a policy that's employed by Logan, by Millville, by Hiram?
We don't want to be like some of them, though.
Well, have you looked at Providence Street? I would be of a mind to leave it the way it is. If it's not a problem, I don't see any reason to change it.
Ruth Ann?
Well, I feel the same way. I think it leaves a little bit of flexibility so that as the properties are developed, if one section is done, then who knows, when they come in to do the next section, they may even want a wider road. Who knows what they'll want. But I think it leaves that case of flexibility, and I did like knowing the answer about that the side road is just not a drop-off, because I've been a victim of that in the dark, in the snow. And so I think that is something that, having that known that other side is responsibly finished as to public safety, I don't see a big change if that is a requirement already.
Well, one thing, and I know it may be peanuts, may not mean much at all, but from an economic standpoint from the city then too, if it's our job to plow these roads and maintain them and reseal them and all that other stuff, and if that other side is developed, then we have more of a tax base to do that, if that makes sense. But if not, we're just paying for all this excess road and all this excess maintenance, where we don't have a tax base of those lots on the other side. So something small, but if you look at it from that perspective, it makes sense as well.
Laura, do you have a comment?
I hear everyone's opinion. I think I look at it if it's in a community, so our citizens have a partial road, it decreases the amount of parking there. I hear you about the plowing and those type of things, but I look at the safety of if you can't park on the road, and then we have a smaller road, we're relieving the developer finishing a road, and that might be many years down the road. So I would be in favor of finishing those things.
Michael?
It's interesting, very interesting, because I have had some experience with both sides of it. From the standpoint, I think the best thing that Scarlett said was most developments try to maximize their resources and have property development on both sides of their roadways. It's only when you run into these situations where they're coming up against a piece of property that maybe individuals that have had it for a long time in their family or whatever, and they don't want curb, gutter, and sidewalk. They don't want to disturb their side. And to have from a developer standpoint, that's a lot of extra money to pay for me to do both sides of the roadway. So there's pros and cons to both sides. A lot of times what I've seen in the past is where they will have the homeowner on the one side that, where the street doesn't have it. They may, they assign something with that property that if it's ever developed, or at some point in time, the city could come in and say, these need to be done. And it's associated with that property, and you would be assessed what that amount is. That I've seen several times in the past. The issue you have then is, what if the road, if you have it where the city can come and say it's time, we need it, then that's going to bring it about. If it's that, and then they could even have the work done, and there's the cost is assessed to that piece of property. But because ideally it would be get it fully developed. So I don't know that you'll run into this too often, but you will at times when one side of a roadway, existing roadway, is going to be expanded, developed, and one side isn't. And I also look from my standpoint of small development up in Franklin right now. If I'm putting curb and gutter on my side of my street, that I have to take care of the ditch and culvert it and all of that, and if they came to me and said, we also want you to do it on the other side, that way we know our roadway's all finished. That could be a financial situation where I would just say, I can't, I'm not going to do it at all, because that adds too much extra cost. But what you're saying is if we move forward and we said we've got to do a partial road, as Rowan was saying, this is a good strategy for it. This is good. It's worked in the past in other places. You can see it around a few times, and I've seen it in Logan, where I've had more experience, that the developer does do a portion of it. Oftentimes more than 50%, the asphalt, curb gutter, and stuff on the one side. So I think what is proposed is good, and like Scarlett and Jesse have said, and Ryan, that if there's going to be a development where it comes forward that this is a condition or a need, and you can really look at what's going to be the best. Because I think, like you said, is that other side ever going to be developed? Is it going to be economical for it to be developed and bear that cost? Or the best situation is to do it now? So
I heard, I kicked it around when I first got the paperwork, or not paperwork, but when I saw it online. And there's some good ideas that I didn't think about. I would like to give it to the next meeting to see what we can come up with. Everybody agree on that? Maybe somebody may change their mind, or maybe we all come to one consensus. So we'll add this to the agenda for the next meeting.
We need a motion.
Do we need a motion on this?
No,
Study item.
just direction.
Okay. And let's see.
Lord, Chair,
Yes.
on the 24-foot minimum, maybe if that's the standard minimum of Parcel Street, or what would be the minimum to include parking? Like a parking on one side and then a two-lane. Just because to me, 24 feet, and I'm not an expert in any way, but 10 feet and 10 feet, you couldn't have a car parked on the side. That would be,
Normally cars are 8 to 8.5 feet wide.
so, and then lane width?
Lane is 10 to 12.
Okay, so 24 plus 8 would be a little bit larger. That would be 30 approximately for a minimum, if you would have a car parked on it.
32.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and your 30 is your minimum width of the road already. So if you're going to go to that point, why not just
Right.
put in a 30-foot road?
Well, and the partial's at 24,
Right.
correct? Okay,
Right.
that's just something I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
All right. Let's put that on the agenda for. Give it some thought. Kick it around while you're shoveling snow.
A lot of snow.
And what do we got next here?
Well, I think I included the bylaws that were approved, your recommendations on the bylaws. They're not on the agenda, they're just included in your packet because they're the approved bylaws from
Okay.
the council did in their last meeting.
If anybody doesn't have anything, we'll move to staff reports. And, what are we going to 1 month, or 1 meeting a month, Scarlett?
Except for May and June, or
One,
April and May?
one meeting a month would probably work right now. I have to say, this is probably the slowest we've been as far as development for probably 6 years. I don't anticipate that we're having a slowdown. I think we've just got a lot of stuff in, we just got slammed, we've got a lot of stuff in progress, and right now, I think there's a few people that are kind of waiting. I think that it's a time when the market is looking for a bigger variety of options than people all over the state of Utah are not comfortable with all of the variety of options. So I think we're kind of at a time where it's a little slow. So 1 meeting a month for the next little bit. And now, just because I said that, probably have 4 concept plans come in next week, but,
All hell will break
Let's plan on, February the 12th, and if we don't need that, we can move everything to the 22nd. We're good. February 12th would be the first scheduled meeting, and if there's nothing on the agenda, we'll just change it to the 26th. I said the 27th, but I think it's the 26th. Ryan?
Just an item. It'd be best for you to always stay on the second if you're gonna do it, so you're right before council.
Okay,
So you're on the second Wednesday instead of the 4th. So I'd recommend you hold your 12th, see what you have, and then not hold the 4th, and then proceed
Okay.
that way.
February is still good ice fishing, so I can take that off. Yeah. All right, so we'll plan on the 12th. And Scarlett, staff reports?
we are working on the Champlin, they are calling it the Ballard Springs, I can't remember the full title. Ballard Springs Senior Living? I think that's what they're calling it. They came in with a few more lots than what we had originally thought, and so we met with the developer. They actually had exceeded the zoning with the number of lots, so they're on their second go around already, and we're working with them on that. They were out of town, their representative was out of town this week, so we didn't look at it in executive staff. We'll be looking at that next week on the 29th. I don't know if it would surprise me if that would be ready for the 12th, but
Okay.
we'll see.
Yeah. That's all you read?
And they did approve your bylaws like we'd already talked about.
Good.
And I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything you want to add?
So we'll plan on February 12th. With, this may help the rest of the commission members, but with tax season coming up, when's the city send out your paperwork for us to do?
The W-2s are in the mail,
They're in the mail, okay?
so
That helps us.
I don't know if they went in the mail yesterday or today, but they're there.
All right.
So, as part of my staff report, if Ryan doesn't have anything else, I would just quickly explain to the two new alternates. We do compensate our planning commission members. It's a little bit different than the city council. City council compensation, they get that whether they show up to their meeting or not. The planning commission members, you only get compensation for the meetings that you show up to. You are considered employees. Those of you that are new, you're not eligible for retirement because you don't work enough. There's not enough hours to be eligible for the Utah State Retirement, but they still make you fill out a form that says that you understand you're not eligible for retirement. So that's what one of those forms is that Alex and Michael have. Providence City pays by direct deposit. So we ask you to fill out that form. We'll ask you for your W-4, and we also do an annual disclosure statement. This, you'll learn more about this in open meetings and in ethics and things like that as you come on board. But one of the things we want to be really careful of is that we're very upfront with people that if you do have a conflict of interest, even though you filled out, and I'll use myself for an example, my husband and my oldest son and my youngest daughter all work for LeGrand Johnson Construction. And actually I have a son-in-law that works for him too. And so I always put that on my disclosure statement. But whenever LeGrand Johnson when they come up for bid, even though I don't have anything to do with the bidding process, but I do have to do some of the paperwork as being the city reporter, I disclose that every time they come up for bid. I don't vote or anything, but I just make it known that my family members work for that company. There are some things that you would have to make known, and just because you put it on that disclosure statement, that's good, you needed to do that, but it doesn't relieve you from disclosing it at a point in time if whatever your, like when LeGrand Johnson Construction comes up in a council discussion, then it doesn't relieve, just because I filled out this form and have it on record, doesn't mean that I should not speak up and say, by the way. Christina Eck is another one that her husband works for Visionary Homes. And every time there's a Visionary Home discussion, she will speak up and say, I need to full disclosure, and those are things. So we do need you to fill out the disclosure form. I do need to have it on file, but you do need to disclose during the public meeting if you're talking about something that your form you would have a conflict with. Utah law allows you to vote. You just need to disclose it.
So I think at the very minimum, we should all probably put on here that we own property within the city.
If you own property within the city.
I own a house. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Ryan, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I think that was very good.
Is there anything else that the commission wants to add?
I'm moving
Any
close to the
comment?
meeting.
Whoa.
You didn't have to-
How did I know that was coming?
You knew it would come way back way.
Have a motion by Roland to close the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Laura. All in favor? Aye. Thank you everyone for showing up. Congratulations, Alex and Mike.